All right, we are live. Hey, what is up, YouTube boxing family? It is K Rod here. I'm back with another good late night post fight YouTube fight live. Um, yeah, so let's talk about it. First of all, congratulations to Jake Paul on a stunning knockout victory, I believe, in the sixth round or seventh round. But yeah, Jake Paul, he did his thing. He knocked out Tyron Woodley in the rematch, and that fight was, well, obviously somewhat boring, and I wasn't really surprised as far as let the fight itself going the way it did because I knew like in the rematch, like they were gonna, like both fighters were going to be very careful and not trying to land wild punches on one another. And I thought there was like a lot of excessive holding in that fight, but I knew um I knew deep down that Jake Paul and Woodley, they were going to land some mean shots late game or mid game in the fight itself. So, I mean, don't get it twisted. It was a very, you know, decent technical fight. But Jake Paul obviously proved that he was the better fighter just by being more patient and letting his shots go as he pleased to do so. But the biggest problem that I have with Jake Paul, even though that I don't really care and don't really talk about him a lot, is because of his, I guess, his lack of ring IQ and just lack of defensive awareness in a fight. But I think that's being constantly improved every time he goes out and fight. In his matches. So I do give him credit for being that type of fighter, for being, like, how should I say, being dedicated to the sport of boxing, like not being undisciplined and actually doing stupid shit outside of his career. But I mean, like, the fight itself was competitive. It was a good fight, and huge credit to Tyron Woodley. He took this fight on 2 weeks' notice, so obviously, any fighter that that is in the mindset of wanting to get a big fight like that, like, your mind has to be on a different level, trying to work hard just to stay ready. When you don't know when the call's gonna come, so knowing that this was not a full camp and Tyron Woodley came to fight. He did what he had to do, but like I said before, Tyron Woodley is not a traditional boxer. I don't think Tyron Woodley is this type of guy that everyone hypes him up to be, to say that he can box, but in all reality, and even I would know myself just by looking at how he fights, he's not a traditionalized boxer. Um, See, like, I got respect for UFC fighters that actually understand their lane, in the sport of MMA away from the sport of boxing. But I'm not gonna sit here and say MMA fighters know how to box because a good load of them don't. That's actually very true. A lot of them, especially where they come from, their background is heavily specialized into wrestling. That's why that you see a lot of MMA fighters, work on their ground game more than their, stand up game. Obviously from the striking perspective, because a lot of MMA fighters, focus on, the fundamentals on the ground before they work on the fundamentals, standing up. Because the problem is that if you keep working on your striking game versus your ground game, then someone's going to have better grappling skills than you in a fight, making you vulnerable in the fight on the ground, and then you could end up getting submitted or just getting outgunned on the ground, where someone could easily, like, obviously control you on the ground, making it harder for you to get up back to a stand up position, to just keep it on a stand up position type of striking fight. But I think like the biggest issue out of this whole situation with Woodley was that I never saw anything different from Tyron Woodley. I think Tyron Woodley thought from the very first fight with Jake Paul that he was going to have the same amount of success from the first fight. And I think Tyron, he came in like way too overzealous of Jake Paul's, fighting style. If anything, he was headhunting way too much. Tyron Woodley was not utilizing any proper jabs. He was being very sluggish with his shots, and he never invested to the body and actually made himself more dangerous on the inside. He like basically he was like throwing a lot of dumb wild ass punches, and I didn't understand what his whole motto was coming into that fight. Um, Obviously, Tyron Woodley could have done a lot better in this fight, but I think his lack of you know punches being thrown accurately really costed him in this fight. And Jake Paul, he just took him out of his own element and made Tyron Woodley look average and good enough. Woodley, he tried to fight, the way he used to do in the first fight, and unfortunately that didn't work. So Jake Paul took him out of his zone, and sooner than later, Jake Paul he set up that right hand beautifully, and boom, he knocked his ass out. But I guess as far as the big question goes, as far as this live goes, where does Jake Paul go from here? I really don't care where the hell Jake Paul goes, but if I want to see any big fights as far as like real fighters go, I think Jake Paul should fight Kendall Gill. That will be a very good fight, only because Kendall Gill he is a true natural fighter as far as his pedigree goes, and he has a lot more dangerous tools, in his skill set that will expose Jake Paul a lot more. And not to mention, he has called out Jake Paul for quite the longest, and Jake Paul and his team has never been vocal of trying to fight him because they know how dangerous Kendall Gill is. Even though Kendall Gill he is a old man, and he's like technically considered, you know, just basically like a old timer that doesn't have too much, time on his side, for boxing. But Kendall, he has a very good background in boxing, knowing that he was, primarily a former NBA basketball player. But still, Kendall's basketball skills are basically divided away from his boxing skills, and his boxing skills have shown to be very precise and very elite caliber, to the sense of where Jake Paul he knows damn well if he meets a real true standard boxer that knows how to operate, let the game, properly in the sweet science. That's what makes Jake Paul look irrelevant, and that's what Jake Paul doesn't want to do. He doesn't want to obviously get into a real tough fight with a fighter that knows how to fight. And Tyron Woodley did not, bring any of those, weaknesses out of Jake Paul. Obviously, if we really want to be concise and very, just honest about it, Jake Paul has never fought a true boxer. That's true. And I mean, Tommy Fury probably would have been like the first victim that Jake Paul would have knocked out. But it's like the fact that Jake Paul calls out UFC fighters and calling out people that don't have any background in boxing, other than like Tyron Woodley, who doesn't even like actually box. He just works on probably just mitts and pads, like especially from the UFC fighters, training perspective. But it's like Tyron Woodley has never stepped into the professional rankings in boxing. So therefore, like Tyron Woodley is not considered a real boxer. A real boxer, especially in Jake Paul's division, would be Tristan Calcruth. That's a real fighter. That's a fighter that is willing to put his life on the line to be the best at what he wants to be. And I mean, Tristan, he's a very tall dude. He's like what, 6'4", at least like maybe like 78 or 79-inch arm reach as far as his wingspan goes. But Tristan, he's a very long dude, and I'm pretty sure Jake Paul, he he obviously doesn't want smoke with those type of guys because he knows damn well what the fuck is gonna happen. But please, to all you Jake Paul dick riders, do not come at me and try to tell me Jake Paul has fought anybody like relevant to be considered a real boxer, because he hasn't fought anybody notable in any boxing matchmaking stable. So honestly, to me, how I see it is that Jake Paul is a fraud in the sport of boxing. He's just clout chasing just to get as much money from the sport, and then basically he's gonna try to sail off to the sunset. And I think eventually he'll try to do what Canelo Alvarez does, but just in a different light. I'll just keep avoiding all these really big tough matchups that obviously people would pay top dollar to see him in which I don't think Jake Paul would want to have the balls to fight any real fighter that is in his weight class division. But to be honest, Jake Paul knows what the outcome is going to be. So obviously, at this point, Jake Paul doesn't really have too many options, because I think eventually, the time's gonna come where some real fighters that actually want to get that Jake Paul money, they're probably gonna step on him. They're probably gonna press on Jake Paul, and they're gonna be like, "Yo, you're not as good as you say you are. Come fight me, asshole." Blah blah blah. And I mean, shout out to that one fighter from Street Beefs, in which he doesn't fight on Street Beefs anymore, but I'm pretty sure to all you Street Beefs fans, um, I think y'all know him. His name is Black Shogun, but be sure to give Black Shogun a follow on his Instagram. But he confronted Jake Paul at one point, I believe in Vegas, during the week of Canelo versus Plant, and Jake Paul and his team were with him, and Jake Paul had his security with him. And when Black Shogun confronted Jake Paul, I think Jake Paul, he was wearing some white ass suit and shit like that. But Jake Paul, he was scared shitless because, fucking Black Shogun just pressed him, and Jake Paul's security basically stood in front of the confrontation, trying to act like, oh well, you can't fucking confront him, blah blah blah, you know, basically they were trying to make it seem like Black Shogun, was this big, enemy to them. So therefore they don't want to, let Jake, protect his manhood, in which, at the end of the day, he he made himself look like a pussy by not trying to stand up for himself and let his security defend him when Black Shogun was, pressing on him, trying to, intimidate him to fight him in public. So I think that the main, gist of what the situation is when a real fighter pulls up on you and wants to fight you, and you have no manhood or no how should I say, no incentive to actually defend your clarity as a fighter, then therefore, what does that define you as a man? At the end of the day, that doesn't make you into a more confident man. That actually turns you into a more defeated man. And I think Jake Paul understands that, and I would definitely believe that the man in the mirror principle will kick in, where he'll start to see himself as a nobody pretty soon in the sport of boxing, when a real boxer actually pulls his number. And I mean, it really depends on how Jake Paul really comes back from those type of losses, if he ever goes through losses in his career. But it's not like Jake Paul, he's going to compete for a world title, because if he really wanted to, all four of his fights could have been big money fights in the cruiserweight division, where he could have fought top 50 or top 100 contenders. And Jake Paul, he doesn't push for that. Why? Because he knows what's going to happen. He knows that, if he's not that confident enough to fight real fighters, why would he want to put his life on the line for that, when he could just make a crap load of money fighting a bunch of nobodies that we don't know, or just like basically relevant celebrities from different sports, just to say, hey, I beat this guy, so therefore that makes me relevant in the sport of boxing. Like, what the fuck does that like mean? Like, that means nothing. That's like literally equivalent to Terrence Crawford going to a preschool, beating the living shit out of other people, and then saying he's number one in that preschool. So therefore you would obviously know that there is so much, you know, disequilibrium in the sport of boxing, where when professional fighters get pissed off at Jake Paul trying to, basically come into the sport of boxing and make a name out of himself, then therefore, they try to shit on Jake Paul and try to say that, oh well, he's ruining the sport, blah blah blah. And it's like when you see what these professional fighters are doing, in the same light, they they obviously get exposed for, like what they do, like Terrence Crawford, Dillian White, like fighters that complain about what YouTube boxers do, and then, at the same token, they're like, they're not pushing for the best fights to be made in boxing, because there's plenty of ducks in boxing where people, want to, play this, political hardball to try to, avoid, their, fighters or their toughest tests being applied to them. And it just destroys up the sport of boxing, because it's like, if the best aren't fighting the best, then this is what you're gonna get, like, as a returnable, as a replacement in return, in boxing, because what it means is that, that the more fighters that don't want to fight each other, then other people that are not qualified to be put into the boxing ring, they're going to think, okay, well, if they're not fighting each other, but if I'm a famous celebrity off of social media and I want to make, like, a crap load of money off of boxing, then fuck it. I will put myself up inside that ring and I will get paid to almost get myself killed, in the process. So I think, like, honestly, about the sport of boxing, at one point it was so competitive to the point where the average, like, obviously the average casual would not put themselves in the ring to get paid a crap load of money if they were a famous celebrity themselves back in those days. But now, the sport has been so docile and so domesticated to the point where, casuals would think like, oh, well, I can get up in there and I can knock people out. And it's not like these fighters are going through any damage. Not like boxing is killing that many fighters, but then, like, little do they know, there are several, if not a good number of deaths that happen every year in the sport of boxing. But that is the mindset of where you get these future Jake Paul fighters from. They think that they're built for the sport, but at the end of the day, they're really not. Jake Paul, he has a good heart and mindset coming into the sport of boxing, but at the end of the day, skills pay the bills and styles make fights. I'm pretty sure somebody from his team could be watching. I'm pretty sure somebody will be hearing this from the live replay. But let me bring a clear message to BJ Flores and the other dude that's training Jake Paul. If Jake Paul wants to become notable in the sport of boxing, you have to start moving him in the right direction to fight notable fighters in the division that he's competing at, i.e., the cruiserweight division. Jake Paul has the tools and abilities to possibly beat fighters in the cruiserweight division. If not, he is not making anything but being a clout chasing prize fighter in the sport of boxing, because he does not need to be calling out Canelo Alvarez, calling out Gervonta Tank Davis, calling out fucking just fighters that we obviously know that, like, they'll probably not take that fight anyway because they know how stupid and how backwards and how asinine that business model would be as far as having a win over Jake Paul on their resume would be, because it's like it doesn't do anything but just give them a crap load of money. But when we talk about legacy, it's like Jake Paul is not a legacy fighter. He's not that type of fighter where he wants to put his risk on the line to be that type of guy to say, "Hey, look, I did it. I did everything that people didn't, like, believe in me, like, for what I want to do." And, like, that's not Jake Paul. Like, Jake Paul is not this type of dude where he is coming out of his way wanting to be the best in boxing. He is just trying to take abuse of the sport while he can, until real boxing fans have to step in, or when, though, like, those real hardcore fans really start speaking up more to say, we don't want no more assholes like Jake Paul ruining our sport. Because, there's a reason why Jake Paul is not doing this in the NBA or any other major sport, because Jake Paul will not be allowed in that type of, like in that type of spotlight, because obviously, you have to prove yourself to be put in that placement in that type of sport or in those sports. But in boxing, it's like, if you think about it, like, let's just say Miley Cyrus and Nicki Minaj, they want to fight each other, they can easily go get themselves a boxing license, and then boom, they could have like a 2-fight, 3-fight deal on pay-per-view, and boom, everybody will probably watch that, because it's like, they're highly, highly well-known celebrities, and everybody knows who they are. So therefore, they'll take advantage of using boxing as that, as that centerpiece front to say that, oh well, if two celebrities don't like each other, then they settle it in the ring, and somebody could possibly get hurt and possibly get killed, but it doesn't matter, because that's what the sport of boxing offers. It's basically bread and circus for, for the weekend, like, basically for, like bread and circus, psychological mind control for the weak and docile people. So obviously, that's not what the sport of boxing, really should be based on. Obviously, the sport of boxing is a true modernistic gladiator sport, and the sport of boxing should be there to be meant for the true entertainment, for the true fans that love the sport and want to see the sport grow to be a highly competitive, mega paying sport. And that's what boxing was when boxing was modernized and innovated. You know, like, obviously prior, leading to the Western, civilization centuries, but still, even way before that, even when boxing was actually just, like, created in the ancient civilization times, but still, the sport itself today has made such a huge impact in the United States and many other parts of the world, but primarily in the U.S. Boxing is the immortal bastion of absolute freedom and, peace and happiness and purity of, of enjoying the true sweet science of all the styles that you could think of in the sport, especially in the U.S. But yeah, that's pretty much like what I have to say. Honestly, shout out to the beautiful queen, Amanda, the real deal, Holyfield 2.0, Serrano, getting a good cruising unanimous decision victory over Miriam Gutierrez. I didn't really like that fight. I thought Gutierrez was not a good opponent. Um, I think, like, the bigger difference is that Amanda showed that she was able to beat Miriam Gutierrez all 10 rounds, and Katie Taylor, she did not beat Miriam Gutierrez in a better fashion. Um, Basically, like, Amanda kind of, like, displayed a lot more pressure and a lot more destructive punches in that fight to make Miriam Gutierrez break late game, and I probably even say early game because Gutierrez, I will say she does have a good chin. She is well. I wouldn't even say a good chin. She has great heart to take a lot of good punches, and then when she breaks down, it's kind of like a broken car that still runs at 25 to maybe 30% left on fuel and oil that's left in the car that's all damaged and broken. But that's basically what Miriam Gutierrez is. She's a broken vehicle that still keeps on going after you, but at the same token, she's not like coming in there to try to run you over. She's coming in there to survive. So I think what showed in that fight between her and Amanda is that Amanda, she showed that she was supremely levels above her, and she did her thing, man. She did a great job, and much love and credit to Gutierrez. She definitely came to fight. She did what she had to do, but Amanda is a legend in her own respective right, and she proved to the world why nobody doesn't want to fight her, regardless of what weight class that she goes to. And I mean, all this weird controversy that people say, like, oh, Amanda, she doesn't have power, blah, 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 at 135. She does have power. It showed in the fight with Gutierrez. But I think the problem was that Gutierrez, she was holding a lot in that fight, and she knew very well that she was gonna get stopped. But I think just her trying to throw like mini punches here and there that didn't really save her. It kind of just made it worse because Amanda, she was smothering a lot. So I think like what Amanda should do next time, in which I probably will say that will be the Katie Taylor fight, she needs to start landing those punches to the body first and then hook right in to the uppercut combinations, because if she can master that lost art where she could throw uppercuts with body shots, I think Amanda Serrano will be the most deadliest fighter out of all of women's boxing next to Clarissa Shields, because that but the skill sets that she possesses now, it's like making her better to the point where Amanda, she is unstoppable, and she's just at the peak of her prime, where she like she has says that, or she had said in the past that she's not boxing for that much longer. So I would assume that her retirement stage will probably stop at the time frame where if she does beat Katie Taylor and becomes undisputed at 135, then that means that she can either just vacate and just retire, or if she really wants to try to do the same thing at 126, or she could do it at 140, where she could probably wait for the winner of Chantel Cameron and Kaylee Reese winner. Uh, that actually will be pretty good, but I don't think Amanda would really want to do that. I think Amanda's just really in it to just go for undisputed, and she knows that Katie Taylor will be the easiest route for undisputed, and I really hope so, because if Jake Paul is going to make that fight, then by all means take advantage of him, like trying to push for that fight, and I say after that, just get up and go, sail off to the sunset and do what you have to do. But much love and respect to Amanda Serrano. She is a threat to be feared with, and every time she fights is a day of reckoning for the opponent that she faces. So she definitely did what she had to do. So much love and respect to the Puerto Rican Queen herself. But yeah, last but not least, I wanted to kind of just talk about the Darren Williams Frank Gore fight. And I'll get up out of here. that was a good fight. I thought Frank Gore was like extremely tired from round 1 and 2, but Darren Williams, he did his thing. He was, hard pressuring Frank Gore, and he landed some mean ass shots. So I thought that fight itself was a very competitive fight. Could have went either way. Frank Gore, he was landing some mean shots, and Darren, he did his thing, and it was a very good fight. I thought that the fight itself was very competitive, and I thought what could have happened a little bit different was, Frank could have invested to the body early, and then he would have definitely knocked out Darren Williams, because Darren Williams, he was very vulnerable to the body. So I don't know. I mean, either way, it was a very good fight, and I had a very good time watching the fights. Also, if you guys watched Derek Chisora versus Parker 2, that was an amazing fight. Parker got the win. Shout out to him. He did his thing. And then I don't know if you guys saw the Zerto Ramirez Gonzalez fight. I think Zerto won, but that was a good fight. And also shout out to the Queen, Senicia Estrada. She did her thing. That was a good fight. I had lots of fun watching her. She knocked out that Guatemalan girl, so she did her thing, man. I really wish that she fights like she could just fight Zarina McCoy next, because I think her and Zarina is like the biggest fight to make out of female boxing. That's just my honest opinion, but yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say. I mean, it's just that, I had a lot of fun covering these fights, or actually even just like watching them. But yeah, it was a good night of fights, man. Be sure to, you know, hit the like button, comment, do what you got to do. I will be covering the PVC fights probably tomorrow. I'll probably talk about just the Richardson Hitchens fight and the David Morrell fight. Obviously, David Morrell, he scored a stoppage corner victory over Alantis Fox. That was pretty devastating. As far as like what the corner had done, I thought Alantis was able to continue, but then again, his trainer did a good decent job. Actually trying to give him a chance, and then I guess he was just of that mindset to say that he wanted to wave in the towel or throw in the towel. So yeah, much credit to his trainer, and same to his brother Michael. And I hope whatever's next for Alantis, may the best wishes go to him. So I don't think he's out of the woods yet. I think he has a good, well enough amount of time to climb back very quickly. Because I mean, super middleweight is a very weak division, so I mean he can just easily just go a easy route for either of those belts, and then just be back on track. But I guess we'll find out, because now that I think about it, if Alatas is going to keep fighting at 168, I think he's going to have to go through some difficult names. But I think his biggest challenges, calling it right now, would probably be Edgar Berlanga, uh, definitely David Benavidez. That's a very tough fight. I'll probably even go with. Oh, I'd probably go with Kyron Davis. Well, no, Kyron Davis. He doesn't fight a super middle, but I'd probably say, yeah, definitely Caleb Plant. But after that, I say he beats everyone else, but I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But yeah, shout out to David Morrell. He got a good victory. And then Richardson Hitchens, he cruised his way to a decision, beating Malik Hawkins. So that was a good fight. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to get up out of here. I'm getting tired. So I'll see you guys. Thank you. Bye.